So welcome everybody to this Macklin's Take YouTube episode with me, Andy Clark, and Matt Macklin. It is the morning after the night before, another very dramatic night at the SSE Arena. That's 2 weekends in a row where we've had very, very dramatic main events and a good undercard too. Of course, last week it was Josh Warrington against Maurizio Lara. We all know what happened there. This weekend it was David Avanesyan against Josh Kelly. Now, going into this fight, nobody really seemed to be too sure what they thought was going to happen, apart from maybe a handful of people. What did happen was that Josh Kelly looked bright to start with, looked nice and sharp, looked confident, put some early rounds in his pocket. But then from kind of round 4 onwards, maybe, things just started to turn. Avanesyan had a good 5th round, and then he stopped him in the 6th. And Matt, the way it played out was interesting, to say the least, because when the end came, it came quickly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think building up to the fight, opinions were very much divided. Some very not sure, saying this is 50-50. And then, there was some that were absolutely sure Kelly was going to win. There was some absolutely sure Avanesyan were going to win, but it was more in the camps or people that were friendly with one side or the other. So I think most neutrals were like not sure really. I think it was it's one of those fights where everyone's going to look back now with the benefit of hindsight and say, oh, well, that was obvious. Kelly hadn't beaten anyone anywhere near Avanesyan's proven level. He was the proven. He'd only had 11 fights. He hadn't had the experience of the season in. He was rushed. It was too soon. Blah blah blah, or etc. etc. But going in, and actually that is right. But I think you at some point you make that jump, and I think the word on the street was in and around the gym that had people who've been close to Kelly that had seen a lot more than we had, because we've only seen him on his 11 fights, are saying, "Now this kid's, trust me, he's the real deal." So, and these are people's opinions who, they've been around a while. They've seen a lot of good fighters. So they're not just, it's not the first good kid they've ever seen. So, their opinions carry a little bit of weight. You take it on board. And my feeling with it was he'll have to be better than he's ever been to beat Avanesyan. But I think he's probably due that step up. All the talk, all the opinions of him are, he was an Olympian. He was a good amateur. So there was pedigree there as well. This isn't a guy who's just come from nowhere and looked good over 10 fights that he should look good in. There was pedigree there, and there was people who's been around a long time that were really, really raving about him. So you factor in all that in as well, and then it's a gamble, and they rolled the dice and they were really confident. So and when people are really confident and their teams are confident, it's infectious. You get swept with that a little bit. Like I say, looking back now, it was obviously too big of a jump. I think and even the Ray Robinson fight, that was the one that I thought, because I was looking at it and thinking, is this too big of a jump? And I thought, well, Ray Robinson, yeah, that was a draw. It was a tough fight, but he'll have learned a lot from that. And if he can go up a couple of levels from that, then maybe he can, and he can beat Avanesyan, but didn't happen that way. He started fast. If we look at a 12-round fight as a war, and then we dissect every round into a battle, Kelly was winning the battles, but he was losing the war. I remember years ago sitting ringside with Billy Graham for the Michael Brody Scott Harrison fight, and Scott Harrison came out, stuck it on Brody first round, and Brody dug in and started standing there, and he was having the better of the action, Brody. And I remember turning to Billy, I was a prospect at this time, saying, Brody's winning this. And he said, yeah, but at what cost? He said, he's not going to keep this up. And a few rounds later, he hit the wall, and Harrison's got him out of there. And that was a bit similar last night. Yeah, Kelly started sharp. He was, Avanesyan was reaching. Kelly was countering him quick. But that wasn't the pace that he was used to fighting at. Normally Kelly can land fight in his burst, have his classy eye-catching burst, drop his hands, go for a walk, fill his lungs up, come back and have another burst. But when he was trying to step up and get that breather, Avanesyan was jumping on him again. And even though he was getting caught again, he was jumping on him again, because he knew you're not going to keep this up. But I have to say, I thought Kelly, when he did start to unravel, he unraveled quickly.
He did, and I think that would be the major concern. I was doing the Sky card, and I had him 4 rounds to 1 up 3-5. Round 3 was pretty tight, so you could have had it 3-2. But as you say, in terms of the battles, he was ahead at that point. But you could see that the momentum had shifted, and like you said, 2020 hindsight is always a great luxury. On in-ring achievement, you would have to have made Avanesyan the favourite. But you see fights like this all the time where the other fighter is having to make the step up. Just because they haven't done it, it doesn't mean they can't do it. And Adam Booth said in the build-up to the fight, he hasn't been asked these questions yet. He needs to be asked them. I want them asked because I know that he's got the answer. Now, Adam Booth is not going to say that unless he absolutely believes it. He's not going to stake his reputation to a fighter unless he 100% believes in them. So we'll get on to Avanesyan in a second because we can't leave him out, but most of the talk will be about Josh Kelly today. So what do you think, in your experience of having seen, much celebrated fighters before who've maybe not or struggled early on to deliver the goods, because this is not over for Josh Kelly, what is the problem? Is he at the minute what you might call a gym fighter, and it's Adam Booth's job to try and get what he sees in the gym out of him on the night? Because, as you said, when the end came last night, it came quick.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, just quickly going back to, and I'll get back onto what you've said then. When we talk about people making the jump, Ryan Garcia against Luke Campbell, Ryan Garcia had looked really good, but he hadn't beaten anyone of Luke Campbell's proven ability. But he made the jump. So that does happen in boxing. So, just because someone hasn't done it yet doesn't mean they're not capable of it. So, and I think when we were saying, this is a 50-50 pick-up fight, Avanesyan was the proven guy. Of course he was. But Kelly was the, he was the hyped prospect, and not hyped for no reason. He looked really good at a certain level, and he did have amateur pedigree. So, there was substance to the hype, if you let's say, or there was certainly, you could see where it was coming from. Now, listen, we're very quick in boxing to build people up and then shoot them down after a performance. He's the best thing in the world, and then the next day he's useless, he's going nowhere. Everyone's guilty of it to some degree. But Josh Kelly's 26 years old, so he's not a kid with his whole career ahead of him. But he's certainly not an old man either. He's certainly got time to go back to the drawing board, look at things, make some adjustments. Now, what adjustments does he need to make? I think he boxes in a style that if you're a massive puncher, you can box like that. I don't think he's a massive puncher. I don't think he hits as hard as the style he boxes. David Haye could box like that because David Haye had ferocious power. So people couldn't really just walk in on David Haye, because they had to be careful, and maybe down the level, these guys couldn't walk in on Kelly. But as he's stepped up to a level now, fringe world class, because that's what it is. It's not an elite level, like it's fringe world class. Like if you look at the welterweight division, Avanesyan is in the top 5. Like he's just not. But he's probably top 10, or thereabouts. So, at that level, I don't think he carries massive power. I think physically quite strong and that good speed, but I don't think he's got the power to box the way he does at that level. He likes to fight in bursts, but when you could see with Avanesyan, he'd have a burst, but then where normally he could step off and get that rest, Avanesyan jumped on him and made him go again and made him go again. He was happy. He didn't care about getting hit with a few and he walked him down. He walked him down thinking, you can't keep this up. You're going to blow up. And when you're a reflex fighter, you start tiring a bit and your legs get a bit not as snappy. Those shots that you're missing by an inch, missing by a fraction, all of a sudden they're hitting you clean. And then the next one's hitting you clean, the next one, then your confidence goes down, he comes on it. And then it's just, and that's what happened. You could see the belief left him then. He started to doubt himself and he did unravel quite quickly. So, yeah, he'll definitely have to he'll have to sit down with Ellen Booth. They'll have to really think now where they go from here. It's certainly not the end of the world. He didn't just become a good fighter. You don't become a good fighter. A good fighter doesn't become a bad fighter overnight. He doesn't suddenly lose his talent. He doesn't suddenly lose his attributes and abilities. But obviously some of his weaknesses or shortcomings have been maybe exposed or highlighted. So he has to look at them and maybe think, well, can we improve on those? If not so much, then how do we change our style to maybe hide them or make them not a factor?
It was interesting listening to the Avanesyan corner between rounds during the fight, basically in its entirety, because Carl Greaves was saying to Avanesyan, good round, even though that he would have known that he'd lost the first couple definitely, and for me the next two as well, because he knew that he was taking something out of Kelly's tank, and he got hit by a left hand clean fairly early, and I think that probably would have been a positive for him too when you look back on it, because he just, not that you want to be hit, but the fact that he took it and he probably felt it and thought, okay, that's fine. Yeah. I can take that. I can live with. They were very confident. They were always very, very confident, and rightly so when you look at what their fighter had achieved. But as you say, Avanesyan in that very strong welterweight division, he's kind of like, he's sort of borderline top 10. Good fighter, very good European champion. Great to see that belt really held by that standard of fighter, because it's a great title, the European title. You get the odd soft one every now and again, and it annoys me when I see it. They'll be over the moon. They'll be over the moon, won't they, Team Avanesyan? Because there's been so many obstacles for this fight, and they felt that it should have happened in December 2018, and we know the arguments about why it didn't happen, but it was a job very well done by them.
Yeah, listen, they had a game plan, they executed it, and that's why you talked about Carl Greaves in the corner going good round. Obviously, he's lost the round, but the fight's going the way they want it to go. That's what we talk about. The 12. If you look at 12 rounds as each round is a battle, but the fight is the war. They might be losing those battles, but the war, it's going in the pattern they want, and that's why he was shocked. They surely they would have known they can't match Kelly for speed and reflexes early on, and if you stand off him and give him room and let him box at his pace, maybe he'll keep that going for 12 rounds. But if you jump on him and stick it on him and take what he gives you, you might just get an opening for a body shot, get the body shot, keep the pressure on him, just whatever he gives you, take it. Even if you're losing the round, as long as you're making him bust the gut to win the round, he's going to fall apart at some point. He's not going to keep it up. It's not how he fights. That's not his style. He's never fought at that tempo. So at some point he's gonna blow up, and it's then a case of, But if you're fighting with your face and you're getting smashed up, trying to force that pace, well then, as you want him to tire, you're probably tired because you've been beaten up. But it wasn't like that with Avanesyan. His hands were nice and high. He was missing a bit, falling short. He was getting picked off, but he wasn't getting busted up, and he was getting some good body shots in, and he was forcing the pace. So you can see how they. Carl Greaves were happy, and I imagine they spoke through that fight and that game plan every single day in training and inspiring. This is what's going to happen. The early rounds are going to be his, but we're going to get to him. That was clearly the game plan.
So to touch on something you mentioned earlier on is that we when top international amateurs turn pro, we do want them to move quick. We want them to have, the boxing public wants them to move quick, to have meaningful fights early on. And I think he did that, Kelly, with Ray Robinson in his, would have been his 10th fight, fighting for European title in his 12th fight. If it then doesn't work, everybody's very quick to say, it's too soon. We also make a big thing now about people shouldn't be obsessed with that it's not the most important thing in the world. And then when it goes, we're very quick to write people off. And that kind of knee jerk is not helpful. But at the same time, there was something pretty alarming about the manner of the defeat last night for Kelly. We can't write him off. It's still early in his pro career. He's got a lot of people around him who believe in him, but it was alarming the way that he lost that fight. There's losing, but then there's the manner of defeat, and we can't pretend it was bad.
Well, look, a couple of people have said to me over the last year or so about Kelly. I won't say who they were, but they said yeah, he's good, but he's an on-top fighter. Once he gets it, giving it back, he doesn't like it. Pretty boy, he's very, flashy, fancy Dan, but when it gets hard in there, I don't think he'll stick it out. And then you think, who's telling you that? And they got an axe to grind. And maybe that was a case in the amateurs, but maybe he's matured now and wants it more, it means more. Who knows, So you hear these things, you take it on board, but you don't necessarily run with it, because you hear that a lot about people. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. So take it with a pinch of salt. But he did unravel quickly. Like I say, he's 26 years old. He's not a kid, but he's certainly not an old man. He's got plenty of time to make adjustments and come again and learn. And Avanesyan's a good fighter. So, it's but I think it's yeah. I'm thinking as I'm talking. It's one of those, isn't it? He look, nowadays there is it's a balance, isn't it? Bringing a fighter through. You don't want to hold someone back, but you got to be careful not to rush them. And in hindsight, it was a gamble that didn't pay off. It was too soon. He probably didn't have the necessary experience. He had the fight with Ray Robinson, but he probably needed a couple of fights like that. Really, that was, when was that? Now that's over a year ago, is it? Yeah,
18 months ago.
Yeah, so it's fights like that are good fights. Yeah, okay, it was a draw with Robinson. Okay, he lost last night against Avanesyan, but at least he'll have learned from those fights. Blasting guys out that you're meant to blast out looks great, makes you feel good, gets people talking about you, but it really doesn't do much for your development as a fighter. Maybe helps your promotion as a marketable, marquee name, gets people raving about you, talking about your hype's a massive tool for the promoter, but it can be a terrible thing for the trainer and the manager, because you're trying to keep your kid grounded. You want him to believe in himself, but you not get carried away with himself. It's not an easy balance to strike, and getting the right matches where you still want the hype driving the promotion, but you want the development to be very, very real and to know where you are. So, picking the right fights, it's an art form. Managing a fighter, picking the right fights at the right time, it is an art form. It's not an easy job. And when you've got a talented kid who's looking the part, it's easy to get dragged, not just, even if your own judgment is telling you to slow down. The TV companies, the promoters, they all want it fast. I remember Bob Arum years ago. I was in Youngstown. I was trying to get myself in the conversation with the Pavlik fight. I was European champion. I'd knocked that Asakine, so I kind of gate crashed the top 5 in the world, and he was boxing in Youngstown, so I went over just to put myself in that conversation. And one morning I was having breakfast and with Bob Arum, and he was telling us a story. And Gary Hyde was there, who was managing Rigando at the time, and Freddie Roach, and we were talking boxing. And I think I said to him, "Oh, is it an exclusive deal you have with HBO with Pavlik?" And he said, "No exclusive deals." He said, "I wouldn't do an exclusive deal again like that." He said, "Because they want to dictate the TV companies, and the TV companies aren't boxing people, they're TV people." He said years ago, when we had Oscar De La Hoya, they were throwing tons of money at us. They wanted this record time world champion, and they wanted De La Hoya to fight Gennaro Hernandez. He said, and I'm the promoter, so I'm like, yeah, this is good. So I spoke to Bruce Trampler, and he said, "No, I don't like that fight for Oscar, not yet." He said, "Oh, but HBO want this and throw money." He said, "I don't care." He said, "I don't think that's a good fight for Oscar. I don't think he's ready for it." He said, okay. So I stuck with my matchmaker, because Bruce Trampler's never let me down. And we ended up doing the Jimmy Bradell fight for the WBO version, which at the time wasn't really, it wasn't seen as it was a lesser title of the world title at that time. But he beat Jimmy Bradell. Then I think he made a defense. And then I think he stepped up a weight, won another title. And I think then he fought Gennaro Hernandez and he beat him. But I remember him saying, I think Bruce Trampler was right. If he'd have fought him when HBO wanted us to fight him, I don't think Oscar would have been ready. That's why, Bruce Trampler is such an integral part of Top Rank. Because he's got that. It's the boxing. You've got to understand everyone's point of view and everyone's agenda. The TV people care about TV, and you're the best thing ever. And when you lose, they're the first people to write you off. Don't give a shit about you. They're just on to the next one. It's a conveyor belt. The promoter, the same, loads of fighters. Your manager and your trainer, they're your team, they're your people, so they're the ones that are guiding you. So they're the most, as a fighter, the most important people are the manager and trainer. You know, the promoter, he's got to please the broadcaster and his sponsors and all the rest of it.
So the manager and trainer in the case of Josh Kelly is one and the same person in Adam Booth. So what do they do now? Kelly is going to be in the horrors, as you would say, for a while now, and he'll take some time away from the gym, you would imagine, because this is going to be difficult to take. But how do they go about bringing him back? Adam Booth's actually been here before. I was on the way home last night and I saw a tweet from a pal of ours, Mark Butcher, fine boxing scribe, and he made the point that Adam Booth has been here before because David Haye got beaten comprehensively by Carl Thompson early in his career when he was flying and everybody thought he was the next big thing. And that was a hell of a reality check. Different fighters, obviously, those two, Kelly and Haye. But it's crucial now, isn't it, that they don't send him back in too deep too soon. But at the same time, for all the reasons you've just mentioned there, he's not going to be given, and because of the pandemic, he's not going to be eased back in for too long, is he?
Look, he's obviously not ready for the likes of an Avanesyan. He's not. That's proven last night. So they rolled the dice, they took the gamble. He wasn't ready. So now they've got to come down a bit. But I don't think they need to come down too far because he needs to stay at a certain level if he's going to develop and improve and get the necessary experience. You know, he drew with Ray Robinson in America. Someone like that, that's a good fight for him. You know, maybe a rematch with him. Maybe not next. Maybe he needs one just to get his confidence back. But then he needs meaningful fights that are going to help him climb that ladder. Not just blasting out guys that he's obviously clearly better than. He needs ones that are going to test him, that he's going to learn from, to gain the necessary experience, the necessary seasoning. Yeah, up until now, the Ray Robinson fight aside, he'd had it completely his own way and looked $1 million doing it. You know, then the step with Avanesyan was a bridge too far. So he's got to come down a little bit, but not too much because he needs those fights now to improve him.
So just finally on that, and we'll move on to a couple of the other fights because there was great action last night. All the respect in the world and congratulations in the world to David Avanesyan, his team, Carl Greaves, Neil Marsh. They did exactly what they said they would do, and it would be great to see Avanesyan get a really big fight because he's given everything to the sport for a long time now. And what you want to see is fighters make money. You know, he's been in some big fights where he'll have made some good purses, but you want to see him kick on from here and really land a big one. That'd be great. As for Kelly, it's not over. You know, people, as Matt said, are very quick to write fighters off. It's not over. Yes, there has been a lot of noise around him. Yes, quite a lot of that noise has been created by the people around him, but that's because they had full belief in him. No career goes perfectly. It will be very, very interesting to see what happens now. Adam Booth probably...
it might not be a bad thing, Andy, as well. It might just slow it down now. You know, it maybe was in this rush to justify the hype. But now it's like, all right, well, let's just slow things down now. Let's pick the right fights here. And maybe you're not going to be the main event. And maybe you're not going to be this. But the development is what's key now.
Absolutely. And yes, we await the next piece of news on that with great interest. Elsewhere on the card, we saw a very good performance by Jordan Gill against Cesar Juarez. A good fight for him, the kind of fight he needed. Ticked a lot of boxes there. Johnny Fisher with a debut at heavyweight. Couldn't tell too much from that, but you know, he's been good fun. He was good fun during the week. And Robbie Davies Jr. Let's touch on this one because Gabriel Valenzuela came over from Mexico. He had good backing. Team Canelo, the Reynosos. And that was thrown together at fairly short notice. Really good fight to throw together at short notice, as was Gill against Juarez. You know, big props to Matchroom there for making those two fights, pulling them out of their arse, really, with about 3-4 weeks to go. It was just kind of a strange performance from Davies, I found, to the point where I did wonder whether he maybe wasn't 100% the way he was kind of catching his breath. It's I don't want to take anything away from Valenzuela, and I don't think that was the case because Davies said absolutely nothing. But I think he could have won that fight. It was very close, but I think he could have won that fight, and he didn't.
I thought the communication between himself and Dominic Ingle in the corner was a bit strange at times. I couldn't hear what Robbie Davies was saying, but there was, like I said, I couldn't hear what was being said, but I knew there was something being said. Because I was thinking, I was trying to listen, I couldn't hear, the masks and everything. But there was, it seemed like he was giving out distress signals to Dominic Ingle, and he was like kind of talking him back into the fight. Also, I think he was trying to say that Dominic wanted him to stay southpaw, and I think Robbie Davies didn't feel comfortable southpaw and was trying to turn back. And they've only had a couple of fights together, and maybe getting caught in between styles was something that maybe he just wasn't comfortable executing what Dominic was asking him to. I don't know, because I don't know what they've worked on in the gym, but he did look. At times he looked to me like he was a little bit caught between styles. He was going southpaw, but he was quite square. That's why he was getting caught with the right hands. And sometimes he'd throw the left hand from the southpaw stance and then pull straight back up. That was a instead of maybe throwing it and commit to it. And if you fall short, at least you're falling on top of the other guy and you can grab a hold of him, or, fall in and roll out. But when he was going left and then pulling straight out, especially it's a guy that was looking for the right hand all the time, I thought that was an obvious technical mistake that he kept making. But you're right, it was a good fight. It was and props to Valenzuela taking it, coming over, and it was a great. The last 2 weeks there's been you don't know what you're going to get. You don't. There's been upsets, haven't there? So it's I think it was really enjoyable night of boxing, a great night of boxing, a dramatic night of boxing. Robbie Davies Jr. now just had a kid, 31 years old. I don't know where his appetite is in the game. Is he going to come back? It wasn't a bad loss. It was close. It was a close fight, split decision. So I don't know where he goes. I mean, in terms of Jordan Gill, it's a funny one because I thought he boxed well last night, Jordan Gill, and I thought that it was another good learning fight. He was under a lot of pressure. Juarez put it on him, put a lot of pressure, and he coped with it quite well. Blowing at times, but he did well. He was good at getting off the ropes, spinning back into the center of the ring, tying him up. He didn't just hold at times as well. He'd stand his ground and fire some body shots through the middle, which I think kept Juarez guessing. But if we're analysing where we think Jordan Gill is, we've got to remember Juarez got stopped in 4 rounds by, was it Carlos Castro in America? So that just puts things into perspective. Juarez was a good opponent, and he's solid and experienced, but he has been stopped by other guys. I think Angelo Leo
stopped him late. Yeah,
so he's a super bantamweight who lost for the world title. So clearly Gill isn't anywhere near ready fighting for a world title, and no one's saying that he is. He's very much improving, but we just got to, even though I think he's very much a work in progress, and I think he's improving all the time. You can see he's very dedicated. I think him and Dave Caldwell have got a great relationship, and you can see they're working on things because you're seeing it in the fights now. You are seeing improvements. But I think this is back to the Josh Kelly thing. How old is Jordan Gill? 26?
Yeah, he's had quite a lot of fights because he turned pro when he was 18. Yeah. And personally, I look at him and I think he's got terrific skills. He obviously works very hard in the gym. I just think that there could still be... Yeah, but I think that there could be more to come there from him because you look at him, he's always looked quite kind of boyish, hasn't he, physically? Not so much anymore. And maybe that strength's going to come in his mid-20s for him. So maybe a bit more, there will be a bit more pop in those punches over the course of the next few fights. That's possible. Yeah,
and I think I think the main thing is he's improving. So everyone's rate of improvement is different. Someone might be just going like that from fight to fight. Then you can't stop them. You might not want to rush them, but they're destroying people. They're moving so quickly. Ryan Garcia, he's 20. What was he? 20 years old, 21 years old, 22 now. When you're knocking people out in a round or undefeated, you can't slow that down. It's a rolling stone. But someone like Gill, who's improving, but he's being tested in these fights. Like that was hard. He worked very hard in that fight, and even though he was fine, he was under pressure, and he he weren't levels above this guy. You know, it was a tough fight. So he'll improve now. There's things to work on. So he's 26. He's not a kid, but again, he's not an old man. So as long as he's improving nicely, another fight like that, but a bit of a step up. I wouldn't jump up from that level because that was a tough enough fight. So I'd pick something that's better than a guy who's better than Juarez, but not a top 10 guy or anything like that. You know, someone who's a bit better than that. See if he can implement the things that we've been working on, learned from this fight, and working on in the gym. Can he execute them in the fight against someone a bit better than Juarez? If he does, great, let's go again. And it's a slower process like that. When you got guys like Ryan Garcia just blasting guys out of there, you have to throw them in, you have to move them quickly. So I think it's very much a kind of, when you're bringing a fighter through, it's performance-based. You don't know what the next move is till you see how he gets on with this guy. And if he blasts him out of there or he just destroys him, he's way too good. Okay, we need to take a bigger jump. If it's, he wins and but he was uncomfortable at times. Okay, well, we'll step it up, but not too much. So that's I think where Jordan Gill is. He's a work in progress. He's moving nicely. I think they need to keep stepping him up, but baby steps.
So just to finish off, let's have a quick one on Florian Marku against Ryland Charlton, because it's just a good match. We knew it was right from the start, and it was a really good fight. Marku won the first 5 rounds. Charlton was winning one of them, and then right at the end, Marku did some fairly serious damage. And throughout the course of those rounds, Charlton was putting plenty into it. Marku was just the better fighter in all departments, not by massive margin, but by clear enough margin. Then in round 6, Marku every now and again would have a chat with Charlton, trying to tell him that he couldn't hurt him. And then Charlton caught him with a left hand and put him down. And yeah, I enjoyed that personally, because I'm not a fan of fighters doing that kind of thing. I do not see what is to be gained by it. Wouldn't matter who it was. And then he had a good spell then, Charlton, before his towel threw in his corner rather threw in the towel, which was a good stoppage because he'd shown a granite chin and taken plenty. But anyway, it was a really, really good fight, that one. So what do you see being the possibilities for Marku now? Where do you think he is?
I don't know, because Charlton, hats off to him. He showed a lot of courage. He was and toughness. He took a lot of shots and he never stopped coming forward trying to win. But there's levels, aren't there? So we don't know really. They're both very much novice pros, really. Obviously, Marku's got more experience in the fighting game with kickboxing, etc. And he did a lot of nice things. Marku, he's got a good jab, good speed, a lot of confidence and belief in himself. Those lead uppercuts from far out were classy shots. That's not an easy shot to time and execute and land. So there's definitely some talent there. There's plenty of personality there and self-belief. But he's a long way to go. The level he's at. Look, it was a 10-rounder. He's moving in the right direction. But like I say, there's levels, isn't there? We don't know where his level is yet.
No, that's true. He delivered last night though, because it was a good performance and better than one we saw against Jamie Stewart. And he's just a good addition because he's got that kind of little bit of mystique about him, being an Albanian now based in London, a bit like Kreshnik Kato from a few years ago. Shifts loads of tickets, which is something we'll see when crowds come back, and he absolutely lives and breathes it, and he's got a good team around him and plenty to say. So the more Florian Markus you have around, the better. Not everybody's going to be like that personality wise, but I've never criticized somebody for putting themselves out there, because ultimately whatever you say, you have to try and back up. But it was a great night, wasn't it? It's the second really good weekend in a row. I saw Frank Smith in the car park right after the show, and he was just saying, "Yeah, wow, what another night." And I just said, "Yeah, absolutely." I said, "But from your point of view, it'd probably be better if home fighters stopped losing." And he just laughed and just said, "Well, yeah, I guess so." But they're just good cards, aren't they? Well-matched fights, good fights. There's nothing wrong with away wins. Away wins, particularly at the minute, everybody's going on about competitive fights, 50-50 fights, and nobody can accuse Matchroom of not doing that at the moment.
No, exactly. Look, the promoters are trying to keep. Yeah, of course, they're building a fighter and they're invested in a fighter, so they want him to come through. But they're playing the numbers game. You know, they're on to the next fighter. They're trying to please the broadcaster, and the broadcasters are happy if the fans are happy, and the fans are happy if they get 50-50 fights. And great, and when you see upsets, that shows that these fights are competitive 50-50 fights. They're not just stacked in the house fighters' favour. So the TV are going to be happy. The fans are happy. The promoters are happy because they're happy. But of course, if they had hopes for a certain fighter to become a star, like certainly Eddie would have for Josh Kelly, then that's a bit disappointing. But it's the rough and the smooth. They're disappointed about Kelly because of where they see him going. Now they have to reevaluate that, and think of a different direction or whatever. But they're happy from a TV point of view and from a fan's point of view. Are putting on great fights. The manager and the trainer, they're the guys that are going to be hurting when the guy loses more so than anyone else. So I think from the TV and the promoter's point of view, I think the way things have gone the last couple of weeks, there's been drama, there's been upsets, there's been people talking about boxing. That's a good thing.
Yep, 100%. That's a good thing. Another big result to just to fill people in on. If you haven't seen this, you may well have seen a knockout by now. Oscar Valdez beating Miguel Berchelt. Terrific fight by the look of it. I haven't watched all of it yet, but the finish is absolutely spectacular. So that wraps it up for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you could check out the rest of the YouTube channel, that'd be much appreciated. I mentioned his name just then, actually. Frank Smith will be our guest on our audio feature podcast, the usual Macklin's Take, if you like. I had a really interesting chat with him last week about what life's been like over the last year, basically, from a promotional point of view, and got into a good few subjects. We're recording one this week. We're taking a deep dive this week into when Naz hit New York for that fight against Kevin Kelly, which every British boxing fan will remember that, and we're doing that with our esteemed colleague Adam Smith, because he followed Naz's career basically all the way through, and he was all over that. When we suggested it to him yesterday, he was on it like a rash. So that could be, I don't know how long that'll go on for. It could be a long one, but anyway, as I said,
and we won't even speak.
There's a good chance I could just start that off and just say, so Adam, just take us through Naz's story. When did you first meet? And then I could probably just go and do something else for at least half an hour. You all know Adam; he's a terrific talker, but he was there all the way through. You know, it's no hyperbole or exaggeration. He was right on top of that story from the beginning. So looking forward to that. Anyway, that's enough from us for today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you again soon.